who won the die roll. This is not a huge play draw kind of matchup. Both players trying to go a little bit longer. You have a bunch of explore creatures versus this Niv Mizzet strategy. Donegan on the play. Turn 1 Llanowar Elves off a basic forest. That's where you want to be with the Sultai deck. Lim is going to shock for a Steam Vent, so there's no shock for the Llanowar Elves. Probably just going to be an opt on his turn as we go back to Donegan.
Suspicious, except so obvious that it's not actually that suspicious.
And possibly light on lands. Shocking for the turn 1 opt. We'll see how that shakes out. Back on Donegan's side.
I found that the Drake's deck plays just so efficiently that it's worth putting kind of a premium on just spending your mana. You very rarely run out of things to do. So even if you're, maybe, even if mana isn't a concern, I think just trying to opt on the first turn is, the burden of proof to not do that is very high. Mm-hmm. If your opponent opens up with something like Fanatical Firebrand, maybe you play the Steam Vents tapped, but against most normal decks, I think it's worth taking the 2.
Llanowar Elves will connect for 1, Lim down to 17, and Donegan follows with the Incubation Druid. That's going to get by a Lava Coil on Lim's turn, and shocking for Sacred Foundry to do it. Lim's at 15.
So if you want to know what the white splash is here, I think in the main deck it is just some Deafening Clarions.
Okay.
Imagine there's some stuff in the sideboard too.
Pretty good field for that sort of effect. And Donegan's going to play a Hydroid Krasis for 2, go up to 19 and draw a card.
Something I like about Deafening Clarion in this sort of strategy is this is a deck that can very, very much leverage the Spirit Link effect too.
Yes.
You have a bunch of 4 toughness creatures, and they hit very, very hard. So, that text is incidental for a lot of strategies. Not so much here.
Yeah. You lose to Niv Mizzet when it doesn't have lifelink, and you really lose to it when it does.
Yeah.
And Donegan's going to have a Wild Growth Walker, pair that immediately with Jade Light Ranger. That's a very productive turn. Draws 2 lands. He's at 17. The Krasis comes across, and Lim is at 13. Enigma Drake is deployed for Lim. Pretty small, just a 2/4 so far. He has some work to do to catch up here.
And you see the Spell Pierce just rotting in Lim's hand here. Donegan's deck is so creature-centric that Spell Pierce, very good in the metagame in general, and kind of the motivation for playing decks like Mono Blue Aggro, an underperformer here.
6th mana source for Donegan, and here's Hydroid Krasis for 4. Draw 2, gain 2. He's at 23. He's got that 3/5 Wild Growth Walker, the 2/2 Krasis, and Jade Light Ranger come across. Enigma Drake's going to eat the Krasis, but still 5 damage, bumping Lim to 8.
And I like Donegan's attack there. It might seem a little short to be alphaing in like that in that position, but when you see the white splash, Deafening Clarion has to come to mind here, and I don't mind Donegan trying to cash in some of his chips here to make sure he gets some damage in, even if he loses his battlefield.
And we've watched Donegan play a few times this weekend, and he generally plays this deck this way. I think Hydroid Krasis is really what pushes him in this direction. He just sees his body as kind of expendable. They get in some chip shots, and he has a bunch of value other places.
And also when you have Fine Finale in the deck too, there's more of an argument for those kind of alpha strike where you lose some resources along the way, but you're also filling up your graveyard and getting that card to be online sooner.
So Lim had a Crackling Drake. That's going to be met by a Vivian Reed from Donegan, though Dive Down will protect. It's nice to get this stuff out of the way pre-combat. Ooh, and Donegan actually has Assassin's Trophy, so that Drake is going to bite it.
Yeah, a little bit of a pause there from Donegan. You do have to worry about going to land number 6 here and potentially enabling Niv Mizzet, but the consequences of letting the Crackling Drake survive are much worse.
Mm-hmm. And Donegan's going to ship across 4/4 Krasis, Jade Light Ranger, and Wild Growth Walker. Just Enigma Drake for Lim from 6 life. This is a rough attack to face down. And the Drake's just going to go in front of the Krasis. Those will trade. 5 damage comes across. Lim is at 1.
Do they trade? I thought there was only 3 spells down there. I guess well, whatever.
Yeah,
looks like
I guess.
It doesn't matter, but
yeah.
Not sure that was a trade, but in any event, Donegan, the victor.
Of no consequence, anyway. Dylan Donegan up 1-0 against John Lim. We'll check out sideboards here. Lim's going to need a little bit of help, and in particular, his deck can be a little bit soft to cards like Vivian Reed, removal heavy draws. So in the sideboard, 3 copies of Cleansing Nova, 3 Negate, 2 Teferi Hero of Dominaria, really showing the white splash on the board here, 2 Disdainful Stroke, a Chemister's Insight, a Lava Coil, a Rail Is It Viceroy, a Shiv on Fire, and Invoke the Divine.
I think we might see kind of a full transformation here. It's tough sledding, I think, against Sultai midrange to try to get it done with creatures. They just have so much removal that going to things like Cleansing Nova, Teferi Hero of Dominaria, Disdainful Stroke, Chemister's Insight. I think that the Rail Is It Viceroy, I think we might see a really substantial just shift in strategy here from Lim.
Yeah, so you're expecting just really heavy sideboarding here. What is he moving off of? Stuff like Enigma Drake?
Yeah, Enigma Drake, maybe Chart a Course, things that are just, for your the more aggro-oriented, the more attacking-oriented parts of the deck. I would get away from that, I think.
All right, on Donegan's side, he has 4 copies of Duress, 3 Negates, a lot of anti-spell stuff here, 2 Plaguecrafter, 2 Cast Down, 2 Midnight Reaper, a Cry of the Carnarium, and an Assassin's Trophy. What's good here?
I like the Midnight Reapers here. Lim's got a fair bit of removal. Really like the Plaguecrafters here. It's a way of answering Planeswalkers and creatures that avoid things like Dive Down and Spell Pierce. The Negates and Duresses as well. I don't know if Donegan's got room for all this stuff, because I think this is a matchup where Wild Growth Walker is good. Often that's where you create some space. If it's good here, I don't know if he has the breathing space to bring in 10 or 11 cards, but he's got a lot of good candidates.
Mm-hmm. If you're liking what you see this weekend, you can check out all these matches. They will be going up over time on our YouTube page, as well as Versus Live, Commander versus Flashback, all the matches from the best of the SCG Tour, and so much more. Just a ton of content on there. Really love it if you would subscribe. We're at youtube.com/StarCityGames.
150,000 some odd subscribers the last time I checked in on that. So a lot of people enjoying the content that's up there. Archives, Live Forever, strategy stuff, all of it. Go subscribe. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. You're already on the internet.
Right. Just click a couple buttons.
You're already into watching videos about Magic because you are watching this right now, I assume. So go ahead and subscribe.
Yeah. The question is, do you want to do the thing that you are literally already doing?
Right.
I would hope the answer is yes.
Yeah. You have no self-control. Just go ahead, youtube.com/StarCityGames.
Rethink some things if the answer is no.
Right. I really like the pressuring/bullying the audience cadence that you and I seem to very naturally get into.
Yes. Todd doesn't do it enough.
No. Todd's very much friendly. He's for the masses, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's good to have that balance, but
Exactly. Yeah.
Doing things a little differently this round.
It is valuable that he exists as a contrast.
Yes.
Yes.
So I've played a good amount of these blue-red X decks in Standard, and they have variable percentages in matchups against specifically Sultai midrange, used to be Golgari midrange. Used to be the case that you wanted to go towards Arclight Phoenix to eke out appropriate value here. What we're seeing Lim do is he has this heavy sideboard Planeswalker package, Teferi Hero of Dominaria. How do you feel like that is going to help him in this matchup, or do you think that is more of a detriment?
I think it's a really good move. Now, the issue here is, you know that they're going to bring in a bunch of Duresses and Negates. And bringing in a bunch of expensive spells when you know that that's happening is structurally not that sound. With that said, trying to get it done with creatures against, these Ravenous Chupacabra, Vivian Reed, Assassin's Trophy, these style of decks, it's really hard to do. And even if you're kind of upgrading Donegan's sideboard cards incidentally, I think the game one plan is so unsound that you need to try something different. Mm-hmm. And there's also a chance that Donegan's not expecting it. And if he doesn't sideboard in super heavy for that kind of stuff, or he just has more creature removal in his deck than he should, you might be at least able to pick up one game that way.
And they are really interesting, the Teferis specifically. Rail is a little bit worse than Teferi, very similar cards, but this is a matchup where it's all about value and going long. Hydroid Krasis really pushed Sultai kind of over the edge with that adding to the deck. And Niv Mizzet is usually your best card in that kind of matchup, but there's so much that the Sultai deck does that just destroys Niv Mizzet immediately. So it becomes kind of a liability, actually.
Well, that to me is like, that's kind of the major question here is, are you... do these cards even work, the Planeswalkers? Is Donegan's presence on the battlefield combined with Duresses and Negates make that just a non-starter? interested to see. It's not helpful, obviously, for Lim to go down to 5 cards, but it's part of the reason that Sultai midrange is so popular and so prevalent is it's really hard to just poke a hole in them. They kind of have all the bases covered.
Yeah.
Especially post-board with duresses and negates. It's that combined with a bunch of creature removal, it's like that's kind of all the card types.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of card types left after you have creatures and non-creatures covered.
Right. And this standard format is really dynamic. I think that's one of the things that makes this format as good as it is there's so much you can do with your flex slots. And one of the things that Donegan's doing is it has these sideboard plague crafters, and they're just kind of good against all of it.
Yeah. I think one of my biggest, bigger concerns week 1 with Sultai midrange is my experience is they are not particularly good against mono red aggro. That deck has turned out to be much ado about nothing in a wider sense. Do you know how many copies of mono red aggro are in day number 2?
I do not.
0 copies.
That's not very many. Speaking of not very many, Lim does keep on 5 cards on the play. He'll start things off with Hollow Fountain Mountain. There was an opt, kept a card there. Donegan's got a Wild Growth Walker on the second turn. His mana is online. Chart a course for Lim.
And you see, Lim here does have a Crackling Drake, so he's that creature's the opportunity cost is so low. Cantrips, even if he has a removal spell, it's not that bad. But at least left some of the creatures in.
Would have liked to have seen a Lava Coil, as now Donegan's adding Jade Light Ranger to that Wild Growth Walker. That one's up to a 3/5. There's Duress on top. Donegan's thinking about if he wants to keep that one. Usually pretty good in a matchup like this.
Yeah, especially opponent on 5 cards. Trading 1-for-1's really good in those spots sort of generally. You think there's any hits in Lim's hand, which there probably are post-board.
Yeah, Donegan keeps it on top. Jade Light Ranger's a 4/3, and the Walker connects for 3. Donegan's at 26. Lim is at 17. Another chart of course for Lim. This is really just spinning tires, not what you want to be doing when you're just far behind on board.
And it looks like he's going to let go of Crackling Drake here, even though that's one of your best ways to recover from a Mulligan of 5, because he does not have a second blue mana. I think he's picked up a Sacred Foundry and a Stone Quarry as the lands there, so can't even cast it.
There was a Lava Coil, though. It had to take down the J-Light Ranger, and now Donegan is adding a Hydroid Crisis for 2. He'll draw a card up to 24. Walker across for 3, Lim down to 14.
Yeah, the Ravnica dual land untapped there, and Crisis for 1 card in lieu of casting Duress suggests to me that Donegan's hand's a little tight on mana.
And on Lim's side, he's going to shock down to 12 and play it to Fairy. Draw a card off of that one. Looks like Niv Mizzet and Cleansing Nova in the hand, so those are not terrible holdings here. Untaps 2 lands.
Unfortunately, the Niv Mizzet pretty far away from being castable.
Yeah, the blue mana woe is definitely an issue there. And Duress for Donegan here. That's going to meet in the gate from Lim. For Merfolk Branch Walker, will grow the Wild Growth Walker, draw a Drowned Catacomb. Donegan's going to go to 28. And another Branch Walker. Wild Growth Walker just getting out of control here. Overgrown Tomb will be drawn. And here's an attack that's going to take down the Teferi. Looks like the Walker is going to cleanly do that with 5 power now, and the Crisis will bump Lim down for 2. Donegan at 31 from exploring. Lim at 12, or 10 rather. Cleansing Nova is the play that'll clean up the battlefield a little bit. And we'll go back to Donegan. A lot of cards in hand. Looks like Assassin's Trophy and Chupacabra among them. Nothing proactive. He just has to pass back.
Yeah, I mean, potentially a really good spot here for Lim to resolve a Planeswalker, as Donegan's hand here can't really. It has to be reactive because he's not doing anything proactive.
Once again, Lim's going to chart a course to draw 2 and discard 1. Has not been able to really get on the battlefield in a meaningful way in any kind of proactive sense.
Yep. Very hard to do against Sultai midrange.
Especially with these blue mana woes. He's got that basic mountain, still just 1 blue mana source here. And there's a Glacial Fortress. That helps a little bit.
Yeah, when you mulligan to 5, it is heartbreaking to have to discard cards like Niv Mizzet and Crackling Drake to your charter courses.
Here's some good proactive elements for Donegan. There's a Jade Light Ranger. It's going to keep another Jade Light Ranger on top. Lim's at 10. This is some pretty good aggression. Not to mention the card filtering next turn.
And, if you're Donegan's side here, you would really like to get this game over with. You're looking over Lim's graveyard here. You can tell that he's sided into a much larger deck that can, with a lot of just individually powerful cards. Not clear that your cascade of just kind of medium 2-for-1s is going to keep you up if he starts playing his good cards.
Here's a Crackling Drake for Lim, and he finds Sulphur Falls. He'll play that, so next turn he will be able to cast Niv Mizzet. So we see Donegan's going to use the Ravenous Chupacabra, target the Crackling Drake, but Disdainful Stroke's going to take care of that one, actually. Cast Down. That'll solve it, and the Jadelight Ranger is going to bump Lim down to 6. Not a lot of life to play with from here, and I believe that Donegan still has Assassin's Trophy for Niv Mizzet.
Or a Planeswalker, perhaps.
Yeah, it kind of has all the bases covered here. I think Lim has a land and a Rail in hand. And there's going to be Rail. Is it Viceroy? Probably just have to tag that Jadelight Ranger. And he does. Be pretty aggressive to try to dig for a Lava Coil there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the Rail at 2 on an empty battlefield is, you know, safer than the Rail being even outside the range of the Jadelight Ranger attack.
There's that Jadelight Ranger that Donegan had kept on top before. He's going to put a Duress in the graveyard and draw a Woodland Cemetery. And here's Assassin's Trophy that's going to take care of that Rail. Lim no longer experiencing colored mana woes.
Yeah, everything's good.
Except for the fact that there's a lot of land and not a lot of action.
But he's drawing very heavy. I mean, there are a lot of really powerful cards left in the deck.
See if he can produce one. He's going to need one pretty quickly. This Jadelight Ranger is a 2-turn clock as things stand. Fair amount of stuff that does answer that, though, and wide range of stuff that could pull him ahead, but that's just another land. Sulphur Falls and Mountain are the holdings. Donegan's going to come across for 3 with that Ranger. Lim down 2-3. This is a huge tap for Donegan. That's a Hydroid Crisis. That might be all she wrote. That's for 6.
Yeah, really outside the range of any of Lim's removal spells here.
Just another land for Lim, and Donegan's going to take this one down 2-0. Sultai midrange over Jeskai Drakes.
And you can tell Donegan's got a stylistic approach